What up, users? This is Masterfeja with another Force of Will video. This time, I'm going to be going back to the basics of what Gill Alhama'At does best, and that's take away the things that your opponents hold dear, love, and cherish, and then either use them against them or flaunt that their opponent no longer has them. So, you guys have seen hopefully you've seen my Force of Will Gill Alhama'At deck, Gill's daddy issues deck back in the day. And that was like my first attempt at the deck, and it still had the Demon Orderlies, and it still had Rachel in it, and I think it still had the Demon Commander in it or whatever. So it was a pretty basic attempt at it, and of course there have been some cards released from Ancient Knights that just bamboozles the craziness level on this deck like nuts. And I'm pretty sure that the word bamboozle doesn't even work there, so don't worry about it. Just forget that I said the word bamboozle. This deck and this ruler particularly are both my favorite. I love Gill Alhama'At. I honestly think that he's secretly a good guy, and I can't wait to see how the lore develops in the Rhea cluster leading up to, I guess, what would be the modern times where we left it off in Echoes of the New World. So this deck pretty much has two major functions. One, you are destroying your opponent's ability to keep a board presence and, more importantly, magic stones. So I have mechanics both to steal opponents' magic stones and to destroy their magic stones. So once you get enough mana counters, ancient magic counters, whatever they, yeah, they're just called mana counters. Once you get enough mana counters, what was I saying? Right, once you get to like turn 3 or 4, once you have enough mana counters onto this dude, and you can flip them and you start getting mad resonance, so 2 mana counters per each magic stone, you're pretty much going to be just like smashing your opponent's field so they can't have any board presence, killing their J Ruler if they're foolish enough to flip it against this deck, and essentially stealing or destroying their stones. So that's the first mechanic, pretty much just complete board dominance. Because the deck actually doesn't have too many Resonators, which isn't necessary when your opponent doesn't really have anything to hit you with. And on top of that, I have a nice combo, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before. I'm not going to claim, originality for it. I've seen it in other decks, and I have had it in my deck for a long time, but I haven't done an updated version of my just classic Gill Alhama'At deck in a long time. But the combination with the Resonator Grusbalesta from Legacy Lost to produce a ridiculous amount of quick mana counters onto your ruler because of sacrificing stones. And because of the new card specifically from Shaela, the Mermaid J Ruler, now we have a reliable way of putting those cards back onto my Magic Stone deck, which is phenomenal because then you don't really have to worry about holding back on just going crazy sack stones to get what you need to win as quickly as possible. So I actually just realized that in the last Gill Alhama'At deck profile, I didn't bother going over what he does, but I'm assuming since you guys are a big Masterfeja fan, hey, you guys can kind of see my reflection. Hey, everybody. Since you guys are massive Masterfeja fans, and I promise to get Dayman on a video pretty soon. He's off in the field doing work, so he hasn't been in the city for the last while. He comes in on the weekends, but it's not enough time to record anything substantial. But you guys will see Dayman and Masterfeja back together, reunited for the first time again, hopefully soon. So, Gill Alhama'At, my favorite J Ruler, has the ability Judgment for 0. Play this ability only if there are 7 or more mana counters on this card, which again is ridiculously easy to do in this deck. He's got Energize for white or black and mana 1, so when he starts the game off, you put 1 mana counter onto him to begin with. And he's got the ability remove a mana counter from this card, produce any color, spend this only to play ancient magic cards, which essentially gives you 2 major reserves of mana, so you're pretty much producing double mana, which is awesome because most of the cards in this deck that are really game-changing are ancient magic cards. And he's also got, obviously, Resonance, Light Magic Stone, or Darkness Magic Stone. Put a mana counter on this card. Then on his flip side, which we will actually be using in this deck build, instead of just using his ruler side like in the previous one with the Valentinas and Azathoths, We have Ebon Dragon Emperor Gill Alhama'At. He's a dragon on this side, J Ruler, and he's got built-in flying, which is awesome. He's a 10/10, and we don't use his secondary judgment, but if you wanted to with the deck, you can get there because of the crazy amount of resonance that you have. So it's remove 20 counters from this card, and remove all other cards you control from the game. Well, when he goes onto the other side, he's got flying, barrier, haste, all this other stuff. So he's insane. Oh, and he becomes a 20/20, so it's nuts. But anyway, so he's got the same thing as his other side, remove mana counters to produce any color only for ancient magic cards. And he's got double resonance now, so to put 2 mana counters. In the other deck, you don't really care about using the mana counters decently early, as long as you can replenish them in time to use your Rising from the Depths. Of course, I'm talking about the Valentina build with Azathoth. But in this one, you do not want to use any of his counters until he's reached 7, because once we flip over, the amount of resonance is bonkers, bananas, crazy, bonkalicious. So, let's get into the additions and chants. Again, guys, just expect this to be pretty much a staple of most of my decks for the next little while, just because they have just so much utility. I run 2 Idols of Magic, 1-drop addition for 1 colorless, and then you pay 1 into it, banish this card, and produce 1 of any color, so it's for the mana fixing. Since we run all 5 colors in this deck, this is pretty useful. And when this card is put into a graveyard from the field, draw a card. So I run 2 of the Idols of Magic. Then I run 3, and these are my bum diggity awesome full arts, and they're just so beautiful. Oh my goodness. I run 3 of the Idols of Willpower, another 1-drop colorless addition. Pay 1 colorless, banish this card, you gain 500 life and draw a card. And the cool thing about this, aside from this being super important to keep us in the game because we don't have a super large amount of Resonators, so it's important to keep our life total up at the beginning of the game, is the fact that unlike the Idol of Magic, it doesn't have to hit your grave for its ability to go off. This deck doesn't work crazy off of the grave, or things having to hit the grave for its abilities to work, but if we do run into the bane of pretty much the existence of all of my decks currently, which is the Barrier Seal, then you don't have to worry about it. It's not triggering the draw part of the effect, because all you have to do is have it leave field. It doesn't have to hit grave. Then I run 4 of the Ancient Heartfelt Fire, or according to Dana, Ancient Knowledge, which is a 1-drop fire chant, which has quick cast, and it is an ancient magic, so we can use the counters off of Papa Gill over there. And it has 2 possible abilities. Choose one. This card deals 400 damage to target J/Resonator, which most times we won't be using unless we use this in tandem with World Flame Summoning. Or put 3 mana counters on your J Ruler. So ideally you want to get one of these in your opening hand, and if you're lucky enough to get a magic stone that taps for fire, then you'll tap this thing, and on your first turn you've got 5 mana counters already. So I run 4 of the Ancient Heartfelt Fire. Back to additions again. I run 1 of the Statue in the Sacred Temple. I was thinking about running 2, but unfortunately, like I said in the previous video, because when you sack it to produce an angel, you lose the ability to tap for any color, and it doesn't get you draw like the other idols. I guess this isn't an idol, I guess this is a statue, but whatever. I only run the 1, and because of the ancient knowledges that I have in the deck, drawing into this thing isn't super difficult. So I run 1, it makes your stones tap for any color, and you can tap 1 of every color to sack this and produce an angel, preferably during your opponent's turn if you have the open mana for it, and then you swing into them with an additional 10 for a game. But I've never actually done that in any playtests or any versus matches so far, so that's just kind of like a win more effect. Now, I've drawn 2 of these in my boxes from Ancient Knights, but I gave 2 of them to Teacher, and then Dayman actually recently pulled one from a box he opened this past weekend. So he gave me that one, and I've just got 1 proxied. When I first made this deck, I used to run 2 of the Charlotte's Water Transformation magic in here just because it has Remnant, which is phenomenal, so it counts as 4 cards. But because of the amount of self-sacking of stones I do in this deck, this card is phenomenal. So it is a Chant with Quick Cast, which is great because most of the cards in this deck have Quick Cast. For 2 blue, it's called Shaela's Foresight, and it's got a bit of a thesis statement here for its abilities. It's got choose one. If your J ruler is Shaela, or Shaela the Mermaid Princess, choose up to 3 instead. So that's never going to happen in this deck, so no worries. We get to choose 1. Put target attacking Resonator on top of its owner's deck, or put target addition on top of its owner's deck, which, you know, Barrier Seal if we really need to get those things from grave or whatever. Or put target addition, no, we already read that. Or target player shuffles all magic stones, this is the part that we care about, from their graveyard into their magic stone deck. Then shuffles all other cards from their graveyard into their deck. Or draw a card. So it gives us a lot of options. I run 2 of them, but specifically we like the whole recurring grave and recurring stones from grave back into our stone deck, because then we can work on a combination I'll show you guys in a second here with flickering Grusbalesta to get even more mana counters. And again, if we get to the point where we're like, you know what, I want to win even more, if we can do it fast enough, we can just flip this dude to his 3rd side and have a barrier, flying haste, mega 2020 killer Robo Mecha Wizard Dragon dude. Moving on, still into our 2-drop Chants, I have 3 of the Transmigration, Light of Transmigration. This is one of the new, what is it? One of the new, what's your name? What's your name, girl? Girl, what's your name, girl? Pandora. Pandora's theme with golems and all that stuff. I haven't built the deck yet, so I'm not quite sure what the relevance of this card to her golem build is, but I'll figure it out once I actually pull a ruler, or I might buy it online just because I've had this bad luck of opening 3 boxes. One of them had the elf dude, and 2 of them had Freyla, so I've got rulers that I didn't want to play. Anyway, so it's a 2-drop Remnant Chant, which is phenomenal because technically these count as 6 as long as I still have a grave. And it's a 2-drop, 1 light and 1 colorless with the following ability. It has remove target Resonator you control from the game. At the next end of turn, put it into the field under its owner's control. So it's super important that you guys pay attention to that second half of the ability at the next end of turn. So it's gone. You can essentially use this for 3 or 4 different uses. 1, if you're about to lose a very important Resonator, you pop this thing and you're like, sorry, your target fizzles, mine was on the stack, mine resolves first, you have no target, you just wasted some will with a Chant that has no target, right? Or if they were going to precision into something. So you can use this to protect your stuff. And then more importantly, what I use it for in this deck, you can flicker things like Grusbalesta's Resonator, or, and I don't know if I've seen anybody else run this particular combination, you can flicker the 2-drop Triton, which came out in Vengolf 3, to essentially at the end of turn steal another one of their Resonators, or in the combo that I use in this deck, something a little bit more juicy. So I run 3 of the Light of Transmigration, which I think is actually a super cool name for that card. It sounds very alchemic. Now, for the recent box of Echoes of the New World that I opened, I actually managed to get none of the Gill Lapis that I really wanted to put into my Rhea deck, but I did get Dawn of the Earth, and I got 3 of them, and I got them in all rarities. I got the Full Art Textured, I got the Holographic, and I got the Normal. So I run 3 of these bad boys. It's a 2-drop Quick Cast Chant. Quick Cast, that's a theme in this deck. Follow along. For 1 light and 1 water. And it's got another small thesis statement, just like the Shaela's Foresight, for its possible abilities. And again, guys, having versatility is so useful in this game. You don't know what kind of situation you'll be going up against, but if you have a bunch of different possible answers to that situation, you're just laughing. You're laughing all the way to the bank. So it's got choose one. This turn, if a Resonator would be put into your opponent's field without being played, remove it from the game instead. So if what I would have super liked was if the Light of Transmigration could work on your opponent's creatures as well instead of just yours, because then this would be phenomenal. You just flicker your opponent's creature and then quick cast this at the end of turn so that it gets removed from the game. But it only works, the Light of Transmigration only works on your stuff. But one cool thing that this does, and we've actually talked about this in previous videos, which no longer exist until YouTube brings their stuff back because internets. We talked about it, I think it was when we were talking about the light book, or we were talking about the first dark book that we did, Dayman and I, and we were talking about how this particular card completely shuts down either of those books when they flip to grab a Will of Hope or Will of Despair Resonator from outside of the game and put onto the field, because it wasn't played, it was just cast, or it was just put onto the field, right? So essentially it would shut down that ruler unless you've got the ability to flip it back over, which I'm not super sure, but I don't think exists anymore because High Speed Dash is no longer in rotation. So this card completely shuts that down. It helps with slowing down your opponent when it comes to Fox decks with bringing in Chimeras. And also it would work for put into your opponent's field without being played. I think it would work on some of the Golem stuff, right? Because the Golem lets you put it onto the field without Temple or whatever. If you've got no Resonators, put target Golem so you can remove that. And I'm not sure if it would work on the 2020 Golem for sacking 3 Golems on the field to put this into play. That might be just a cost. Yeah, I think that's just a cost. So this will definitely work on the Temple way of getting Golems onto the field. And a bunch of other ways of just cheating Resonators onto the field. Like, for instance, Rising from the Depths. It lets you put stuff onto the field without playing them. So, it also, well, now that I've made like a 4 or 5 minute aside, let's move on to the rest of the abilities, which are super useful. And every one of the choices you have also gives you the addition of drawing a card. So this is one of the super important, helps me keep drawing cards in the deck. And if you guys have seen any of my previous Gill Alhama'At videos, other than the most recent one, in all the versus videos, the thing that really just killed me, especially against Dayman's Gill Lapis deck, was the lack of cards in hand and the lack of the ability to continuously draw more cards. Anyway, so we have or recover target Resonator you control. It gains +200/+200 in barrier until the end of turn and draw a card, which is awesome because if you've got a card that's beefy as all sin, like for instance Grusbalesta, after you've got a bunch of different stones on the field, you swing, your opponent's like, oh damn, I only have a little bit of life left, and you're like, oh well, sorry to ruin your day there, chum friend buddy pal. You play this, recover it, add 2/2 to it, and then swing potentially for game. Oh, and it's got barrier, so they can't quick cast kill it to death either. Unless they do it on the stack. Okay, whatever. I'm kind of defeating my own purpose here. So, draw a card, or remove all non-Magic Stone, non-J-Ruler cards your opponents control with total cost 0 from the game, draw a card. So this would have been useful. I mean, it came out at the end of Lapis Cluster, so this would have been useful against decks that had a ridiculous amount of Regalia, and it's going to be super useful against essentially token rush decks like the Elves, for instance. So this pretty much clears your opponent's field of 0 cost things. So I run 3 of the Dawn of the Earth. Moving right on, my dudes and dudettes, I run 3 of Grusbalesta's Secret Technique. Now, I've had this, I think I had this in my original build of the deck. I can't remember if I added it in later, but I've always thought that this card is ridiculously underrated. So it's a 2-drop quick cast again, keeping with the theme, for Darkness and Wind, or Green and Black. And it's got the ability, target Magic Stone becomes a 10/10 Resonator with Swiftness until the end of turn. It's still a Magic Stone. So the usefulness in this is in the following combination. Either you're early game and you've wiped your opponent's field, or they just haven't been able to play anything. You turn one of your stones into a 10/10 with Swiftness and you swing into them for 10, and then if they don't have any follow-up kill spells or anything like that, you're essentially just laughing because you hit them for 10 for a 2-drop with a Magic Stone. Or you use it in the combination of you play this onto one of their Magic Stones, you summon Triton onto the field, and the second he has enter the field ability, you can take control of target Resonator. You grab that Resonator, which is still a stone, but it's a 10/10. The smart opponent, what they'll do is they'll tap it to produce just a floating mana so that you don't get a Resonator that can attack that turn. And I've seen Teacher do that a bunch of times, and good on him, and you guys should too as well if you're ever going up against this combination. but you've essentially taken one of their stones, and then the way that this, and I've actually looked up the ruling on this, and it's actually kind of nifty. This was from back when it first came out in Legacy Lost. So the way that it works is that magic stones can't go back to your hand, and if they would be, yeah, whatever. So they can't be put back into your hand. So the original combination I used for this was that I would turn 2 or 3 of their stones into creatures, and then I would play Rising from the Depths in the old build of this deck, and they would just have a handful of stones because they can't play stones from hand. But apparently they changed the ruling on that essentially the second that this card came out, just because it'd be kind of ridiculous if your hand size got reduced by 2 or 3 permanently because you had dead cards that you're not like physically allowed to play. So if anything would go to hand in terms of stones, they just go on top of your Magic Stone deck. But the way that this and Trident resolve is that because they both resolve at the end of turn, you can choose the order. So what you do is you choose the Magic Stone to stop being a Resonator first, and then you resolve the Trident's end of ability, which would be return the Resonator to your opponent at the end of turn. So pretty much what you just did is you stole one of their Magic Stones, and you get to keep it because you don't have to return it because it's not a Resonator anymore at the end of turn. And it is such a good combination. Oh my goodness. And it only costs 4. And you don't even have to really worry about completely like burning out all of your will into this because we're running Gill Alhama'At, so we have a lot of ancient magic spells we can play just off of the resonance that we've been building up to that point. So I run 3 of Grusbalesta Secret Technique. It gives you a lot of options, and it is just absolutely trolly hilarious to steal your opponent's stones. To keep with the theme of quick cast and the ability to keep a bunch of cards in hand, just in case you're going up against a really competitive deck that likes to essentially ruin your day and not let you have any cards, I run 3 of the Ancient Knowledge. I would run 4, but I don't own 4, and I think 3 does the job pretty well. It's a 4-drop Ancient Magic spell, 2 blue and 2 colorless, that has the following ability. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put 2 cards from among them into your hand, and put the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. So unlike Blood Spray, which also has the added ability of killing a 2-drop or less if you awaken it, it actually lets you almost siphon your deck too, because you look at the top 5 and you pick the 2 that you want instead of just drawing 2 blind cards. I run 3 of these, and really they're just there to make sure that I'm constantly well fed for cards in hand. Then I run essentially the Neo Black Moonbeam, since it didn't get reprinted in Vingolf 3, which is Erasure. I run 2 of them. It is a 4-drop Ancient Magic spell for 1 light, 1 dark, and 2 colorless, which has destroy target non-magic stone card. So this wouldn't work if we were trying to destroy their card, their Resonator with Grusbalesta Secret Technique, because essentially it's still a magic stone, so it doesn't work. But this is a 4-drop that we can pretty much pay for free because of, or play for free because of the mana counters, and it can destroy anything. Like anything. Additions, Resonators, J-Rulers, the only thing it can't kill is stones. I run 2 of those. With the draw on the deck, I usually see at least 1 per game. I like to not see them firsthand if possible, just because it's a 4-drop and it's not quick cast. Then another quick cast, and now we're getting into the 5-drop of the Chants. As you've seen so far, the deck is mostly Chants. I run 3 of Rachel's Smile, and rest her soul. Unfortunately, she is dead, along with her master Gill Alhama'At, which makes me super sad because I finally found a card that I super liked, and it pretty much got killed at the end of the set that it came out in. So it is Rachel's Smile. It's a 5-drop for 2 blue and 3 colorless, and it has the ability rest all J/Resonators and magic stones your opponents control. So when you're getting ready for that game-winning swing, you pretty much just play one of these things for whatever mana counters you have and go to town on your opponent's life points. So I run 3 of those bad boys. I think they're really good. Now, the meat and potatoes of my chants. This is my favorite chant to ever come out for Ancient Magic, and unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get much better than this. It is World Flame Summoning, and it's another one of those cards that gives me a ridiculous amount of value because there are so many options that we can do with it, even though I usually use it for board dominance and getting rid of my opponent's stones. But later game, you can say screw board dominance and hit him directly. So it is Ancient Magic chant for 6, 2 red, and 4 colorless. and just for the record, I run 4 of them. And it has choose 2. Your opponent banishes a special magic stone, which is 9 times out of 10 the case for most of their stones. Or this card deals 800 damage to each resonator your opponent controls, or this card deals 800 damage to your opponent, or this card deals 1500 damage to target J/Resonator. So without buffs, this thing kills pretty much every existing J ruler right now. There hasn't been anything that comes out stronger than that without pumping something into it or like activated abilities or buffs. So I run 4 of these things. If I can get the 7 mana counters onto this dude to flip for turn 3 or 4, I'm pretty much going to be dropping these things all day long. The only thing I was thinking about maybe changing in this deck is fiddling around with the balancing a little bit and maybe doing some recurring of cards like with the Aqua Soul from Shaela's decks, the 1-drop that lets me grab a chant with quick cast, or sorry, it's a quick cast card that lets me grab a chant from grave and put it to hand, but that's probably for later on. So now we're getting into the Resonators. I have no 1-drop Resonators. My first Resonator is a 2-drop Trident, Emperor of the 7 Seas. He is a myth from Vingolf 3. 4/4. His stats aren't crazy impressive for being a 2-drop. I would have liked it if he was even a 4/5 or a 5/5, but he can't have it all. He is a myth, which I'm sure they totally did on purpose just to spite anybody who wanted to make this dude into a ridiculously useful card in Shaela's Mermaid Tribal, so that's pretty hilarious. But I guess he's kind of a god, so whatever. I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt. When this card enters the field, gain control of target Resonator until the end of turn. So you guys know the combo with, he could just hit the field and then steal a Resonator. I get it until the end of turn, or we can use it in tandem with Grusbalesta's secret technique to steal their stones, choose the order of resolution at the end of turn, and get to keep their stone. And of course, use this thing in combination with the Light of Transmigration so that I can have him hit the field, then steal a Resonator, then at the end of turn, during turn, I use Light of Transmigration onto it. He flickers out, and then he hits the field at the end of turn, so I get to steal another Resonator, and I'm not sure how it would resolve. Would they get their Resonator directly back immediately, or would that technically happen next turn? I'm not sure. I'll have to look up the ruling on that. But you can get multiple instances of him stealing your opponent's Resonators with using the Light of Transmigration. Then I run 3, and I've seriously contemplated putting this up to 4 just because of how useful he is for ramping up the speed at which I get my mana counters and just really accelerating this deck's ability to just completely dominate the field. So I've been thinking about running 4, but with the balancing that I've got in the deck so far, I think 3 is ideal. Oh, and they're all full arts. I don't know if you guys noticed. Quite a beautiful. I run 3 of the Grusbalesta Magic Stone Researcher, and it took me a bloody half a century to learn how to properly pronounce his name. And it's very awkward, even for English speakers. I haven't looked up the lore. He might be something from Germanic lore, but I have no idea. Grusbalesta is a 6/6 Resonator, 6 Sages. That doesn't really matter just because we're not really going for any particular theme in the deck for the Resonators. But he has another massive amount of total usefulness. And aside from Triton, most of the cards in this deck do multiple abilities and have multiple uses, which gives you a lot of options for the way that you approach your opponent's deck. Anyway, so he's got magic stones you control gain barrier. So if you're going up against an opponent that uses Hook in the deck, for instance, you don't have to worry about it as soon as turn 3 or whenever you draw into him. This card gains +1/+1 for each magic stone you control with a different name. And if you are to trigger his secondary ability, which I'll read in just a second here, you're pretty much guaranteed for him to hit the field if it's a little bit later game as an 11/11. And the cool thing is that he progressively gets stronger. And it's super useful in this deck. And when I show you guys the Magic Stone deck, you'll totally agree. So when this card enters a field, banish any number of Magic Stones. Put the top X cards of your Magic Stone deck into your field rested, where X is the number of Magic Stones banished this way. Now, them hitting the field rested is not ideal, but it's not bad for this deck because we run so many dual stones that we don't necessarily want burning us, that we don't really care. We'll sack all the ones that we can, and then the ones that come in tapped isn't that big of a deal because we still get the resonance for Gill Alhama'At, and we don't have to worry about getting burned because they come in tapped anyway. So this card gains swiftness and precision as long as you control 5 or more magic stone with different names, which is super easy to do in this deck, and you guys will see once I show you the magic stone deck. I run 3 of those bad boys. And then the final card in the deck proper, and also the final Resonator, is Arla the Lightwing. And this is another weird thing. I swear I got like a weird organization, the two Ancient Knights booster boxes that I got, because the 2 promos that I got from those boxes were both Arla the Lightwing, and the 2 rulers were both Shaela. So I don't know how I feel about that, but I've actually been using both of the Arlas, so I'm not complaining too much on this end. So it's an 8/8 for 4, which is a little high for the stats, but it's the abilities that we care about. 4, which is 2 light and 2 colorless. The Resonator is Angel, and it has flying. Other J/Resonators you control with flying gain barrier. So essentially this guy has taken the position of the Wind Secluded Refuge that I used to run in this deck. And he's got the abilities for tap, this card deals 400 damage to target attacking J/Resonator, or tap and pay 1 light, destroy target addition or Regalia. Again, Regalia not in rotation anymore, so this guy would be more useful in Regalia sense for Wanderer, but I care about the addition destruction because unfortunately Neo Shadow Barrier, and yeah, Neo Shadow Barrier is kind of brutal in this. And then tap 3 light and tap this card, destroy target J/Resonator with flying. Now, one cool combo I thought about doing for this deck, but I didn't want to mess with the balancing of the way that I've got the cards so far, is if you put in a few of the, Dreams of Flight, and you combo it with a couple of these guys, you can pretty much give your opponent's J/Resonator flying and then tap this dude with 3 to kill it. So it's like, oh, what are you going to do? I don't even have anything with flying. It's like, boop, yes you do. Woo, you're dead. So that's a cool combo that you guys might want to exploit in any decks that you run Arla the Lightwing in, but not in this deck. So I run 1 of him. He gives phenomenal protection to Gill Alhama'At on the opposite side, just because I don't run the Obsidian Dragon Princess to give him Imperishable in this deck anymore, and just like if he's bodying into things and I don't want somebody to just erasure me or hit me for a bunch of strength counters into some sort of like a destruction spell like in Kirik's decks. So that was the deck proper. Now we'll get into the Magic Stone deck, and this thing is a little beefy, as you can see there. It is the largest Magic Stone deck that I've ever had. It is a whopping 16 Magic Stones, so only 4 shy of the allotted amount of cards you can even have in a Magic Stone deck. So let's get into it. I've got 4 of the ancient Magic Stones, and the first one, as you can see, is in beautiful, luxurious full art for your viewing pleasure. I run 4 of these, not because I really run a ridiculous amount of white, but because with its ability to tap for any color, if I remove a mana counter off of my ruler, it helps me with mana fixing, which sometimes is an issue and sometimes it just works out perfectly. So of my 16, I run 4 Ancient Magic Stones. Then I run 1 Magic Stone of Heaven's Rift. So one thing that you have to keep in mind whenever you're sacking stones for this particular deck, unless you draw into or have the Shaela's Observation in hand, Shaela's Foresight, you want to make sure that you keep track of which stones you have singles of, which stones you have doubles, and which stones you have more of. Just so that you can think of like, okay, for when I summon my Grusbalesta again, or I flicker him or something like that, I got to keep in mind which ones will let him have his buffs and have those additional 2 abilities of having swiftness and precision. So if this thing hits the field, ideally, unless you can siphon it back on top of your stone deck and reliably draw into it, when this thing hits the field, you do not want to sack it, because I only run 1 Magic Stone of Heaven's Rift. Then, because you get Dark and Light Resonance, to cover my blue base and still get the resonance for light, I run 2 Magic Stones of Light Vapors, and yep, this one is the full art. You can't really see it through the sleeve, but it's super nice. So it counts as a light and a blue. So I run 2 of those. This is one of those ones you have to keep an eye on, because you sack 1, you don't want to lose that buff to your Grusbalesta. And then most of the stones from here on in are going to be 2-ofs. I run 2 Magic Stone of Dark Depths, both of them full arts. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. And it counts as a darkness and a blue. So far we've got 3 for light darkness, or sorry, no, 5 for light darkness, 2 for light blue, and 2 for light darkness. Then I run 2 of Magic Stone of Black Silence, also full art, so beautiful, which counts as a wind and a darkness. I run 1, and only because I only drew 1, or I guess I only got 1 from Dayman because I never bought a box of Legacy Lost, of the Killing Stone. So this is one of the dual stones that is not for the ruler that we have. So when this thing hits the field, it is going to burn us for 300 if we let it come in untapped. But if we're lucky enough to grab it from sacking with Grusbalesta and it hits the field tapped anyway, it's no issue. And it has a secondary ability that's actually useful to this deck, which is when this card is put into a graveyard from the field, your opponent loses 100 life and you gain 100 life. So if you're at that point where you need that measly 100 life, you can sack it to grab more stones and stuff like that. To gain that 100 life and do 100 to your opponent, but you only have 1 in the deck, so ideally you don't want to do that. Then I run 2, and this one is the Luxurious Full Art. You're welcome, you're welcome. Oh my goodness, so pretty, such wow. Of the Magic Stone of Scorched Veils, which is for our red fixing. We have 2 of them, and they're both for darkness and fire. And to wrap things up for the Magic Stone deck here, and the deck in general, we have a Magic Stone of Ebon, which is Gill Lapis's signature stone for the new decks. I guess that would be his black-red J-Ruler. I think he came out in Return of the Dragon Emperor, but don't quote me on that one. So it's another one of the burn stones because we're not running Gill Lapis as a ruler. So if this thing hits the field and like turn 1, for instance, and we need it for Ancient Heartfelt Fire, we'll take the 300. It's not ideal. Ideally, we'd like to sack into these stones and get them from Grusbalesta entering the field. But if not, whatever, 300 doesn't break the bank usually. So this can be tapped for fire or darkness, and it has a secondary ability. So this is another one of those stones that has a useful enter the field ability, which is when this card enters the field, remove the top card of your opponent's Magic Stone. Remove the top card of your opponent's deck from the game. Gobbly-goobly-goop. Goodness gracious. So this thing hits the field, your opponent removes a card off the top of their deck, which could be ridiculously important. We never know. It could be the card that they have 15 of in the deck if they're running, for instance, Kaguya's Millennium Wardrobe deck or something like that, or it could be something ridiculously useful that they only have like 1 or 2 of. Like for instance, like in my decks, maybe if Dayman played his Gill Lapis deck against me and he put that card down and I got rid of my what is it, Sacred what's-a-who's-it's in the Temple of Awesomeness card, the one that lets you tap for everything. What's it called? The statue in the Sacred Temple. That one, if that got removed, I'd be pretty peeved. So I run 2 of these things for the total Magic Stone deck being 16 cards. You could, if you're really gung-ho, run 20, you could run 18, whatever increment. I found 16 works the best for the amount of siphoning you do through your Magic Stone deck and for the colors that you need, which in the case of this deck is quite literally every color. So guys, this was my Gill Alhama'At Your Opponent Can't Have Nice Things deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. I actually think that, you know, it still suffers greatly from hand control, but I think that this deck would actually work quite well in competitive, in actual tournament play. I am hoping that this year Dayman and I can scrounge some additional funds together and then go to our nearest Grand Prix, which unfortunately is about half a continent away in the mystical land of Eastern Canada, specifically Toronto or Montreal. So if we can justify it, that'd be great, since neither of us have really been to Eastern Canada all that much, and it'd be a really, really fun experience. Guys, keep supporting each other, keep loving each other, Smash that like, subscribe if you'd like to. There will be a deck list in the description as usual, and any criticism, even if it's just like, hey, Masterfeja, you're a stuttering mess, you need to work on your linguistic skills, that's fine. Drop it in the comment section, guys, and I will see you for the next deck or versus video. Keep Force of Willin'. Peace!